everybody? It's Brandon, and I'm back with another knee-jerk reaction review. This is for Yellowjackets episode 2. Yes, I'm covering this along with Dexter because I could not help myself. I had to know what this was all about. And after episode 1, I didn't get many answers, but I was glued in a little more. Did I get more answers here? No, not really. But I got to tell you, I think I enjoyed this episode even more than episode 1 and or the trailer, because now we at least, and again, people, spoilers, we are at least after the plane crash. But you know, it's doing the same thing the first episode did, where it is taking you to the future where we are present day, but it's also bouncing back and forth. But now it's not like boring. Not that the first episode was boring, but you know, it is more boring just watching teens in their everyday life. Now the going back is going back to after the plane had crashed, and we're seeing the wreckage, and we're seeing all the people that may or may not have passed on. And for some reason, I'm convinced some like crazy shit has happened and no one's gonna die on this fucking little island or whatever it is they're on. I'm convinced some crazy shit like that's gonna happen, but that's just me. Maybe I'm thinking too deep and I've seen too many weird plane crash shows. But I mean, there's definitely people that die in the plane, and you have moments that are pretty, you know, intense too. Like Shauna is trying to fucking save her friend, and what's her name? You know, Mr. Blank on the spot here, is telling her, you know, the other main younger girl is telling her, nope, leave her. And then shit, they thought they left her to die, and I was even thinking that was going to happen, to where they were going to have a fucked up guilty conscience, but the girl they left to die comes out and she's like, surprise bitches. And once again, we're seeing there could be some friction here, but at the end of the day, after this episode was all said and done, I think everybody kind of banded together. But you know, I think that's the calm before the storm. They're trying to trick the audience, like, oh, maybe these girls are stronger than what we thought they were. They didn't want them to be completely in turmoil right away. You know, they're in turmoil going into this plane crash, and they're in turmoil even more before the shit pops off. They want us to kind of pull everybody together before I think the shit actually hits the fan. And then the person who really shines here in this episode, just in general overall, is Misty, played by Christina Ricci. Like, the younger version of herself is mainly like the center of this episode. The older version too, of course, catching up with Juliette Lewis. She's literally waiting for her in the house with a shotgun, but you know, they resolve things. But going back to when she's just a kid, she's getting a prank call saying, like, you got anal in the fucking janitor closet. And the way she words it, she's like, no, I didn't do that in the janitor closet. And that girl in the other line's like, oh, where did you do it then, Misty? Just making her feel horrible, like a horrible piece of shit. And if it wasn't evident before, it is definitely evident now that Misty is very, very mistreated. And she's a girl that gets heavily picked on, which is horrible. And you hate seeing that for her, especially because I have such a sweet spot for Christina Ricci. And even though if this ain't the, you know, Christina Ricci playing this character when she's younger, it still is her, because that's the character. It's a different actress, but that's the character. So I'm just feeling for her completely at this point, and watching her go through the trials and tribulations that she does go through. But of course, it gets a little different once they hit and wreck, because when they wreck, I don't think it's island. I'm so caught up in Lost that I call every plane crash on an island. It's one of my favorite shows ever. But they do wreck, and when they wreck, Misty is like all of a sudden accepted in a way, because she is the only person that seems to know how to handle these things. She thinks quick. She helps save the coach by, you know, chopping off his leg, and everybody's like, what the fuck, Misty? But what she's actually doing is smart. She's getting rid of, like, you know, the leg, so then she can, you know, put salt on it, bandage it up. I don't know. I'm not a doctor, people, but it seems like the smart thing to do that I wouldn't be able to go through with in this type of situation. And you can see everybody taking notice. At first, they look at her like she's crazy, but it's like, damn, like they can see like she's really out here helping people right now. If she didn't think so quick, maybe we wouldn't be in this situation. So it's kind of cool to see her being accepted, and more on that later. And then, of course, other than that, we get a little bit of Juliette Lewis in this, but it's mainly Misty and Shauna's episode. Shauna, as an adult in this, is just going through it, man. Like, she does some weird shit here. For instance, she gets in a wreck, and after she gets in a wreck, this guy almost is forgiving of her, even though she was clearly at fault, wrecking and, you know, rear-ending him, because her mind's all over the place. It's elsewhere. As you can tell from the first episode, you can just see it in her face. She is not present. And we find out she's going through it with her husband at like a marriage counseling thing. So that probably has a lot to do with it, and doesn't probably have a good control of her household and feel engaged for that. So she wrecks into the back of the guy. She's like, "Oh, you believe me? Are you fucking kidding? Like, can you believe this? You're kidding me, right? Like, you just stop and let me ram into the back of you." Basically, is her complaint. And the guy just, makes jokes like, "Hey, I know a guy. Let me write this number down, and this is not my fault, by the way," type of thing. And he gives the number out, and she calls back the next day, and this is in the midst of her having marriage problems, and it is the guy. He's like, "I knew you'd call. I actually am the guy I referred you to. It is me." And he's like, "Maybe I can take you out for dinner sometime." And she's actually having some, moment where she's thinking about it, like, God, like, do I want to do that? Because she's on the rocks. You can see her really mulling it over, even if she doesn't say it out loud. And also, this is all whilst her husband, her and her husband are doing some role play now. That's what the couples therapy thing said. And in the midst of that, them finally, getting it on because they had been having trouble with that, he goes to the bathroom and she sees not a direct message that tells you he's cheating, but, you can put two and two together. We'll see if that transpires or correlates to that, saying that, "Hey, like, same time as always," and it's some chick's name. I can't remember what the name is. So she looks at it like, mm. So it looks like Shauna, much like, how she kind of cheated on, what in the hell is that main girl's name in this? The main girl that's a kid's name. This is going to drive me crazy. Well, basically, the girl in the first episode, she's getting finger blasted by her boyfriend. And then he comes out in the first episode and she looks at Shauna like, "When are you going to get laid?" But Shauna ended up sleeping with the same guy that finger blasted her best friend. Lack of a better term, that's what we'll call it. So she was on some devious sexual shit then. And now, as an adult, here she is again on some devious sexual shit. She's over here, looking like she might just, after all, like, cheat on her husband. That might be what she does here. You're kind of getting those vibes that might actually go down. So that could be an interesting lover's quarrel type situation. And there's even a moment where she's like, right before she wrecks into the new dude, where she talks about how she wants the meat out of the freezer. And then her daughter never, of course, listens to her and takes the meat out of the freezer. So she sees a bunny in the yard and it shows her chopping it up. And it's almost like dreamlike. So you're like, did she really just do this? But then her husband's talking and complimenting the food later, saying, "This is like really good. What is this?" And she literally just comes out and is like, "I saw a bunny in the yard because your daughter didn't lay the meat out. And, I cut it from its like head to its anus, like exactly what we saw, what we thought might be a dream like state." And she explains it so vividly, but of course they don't believe it, like, "Oh, you're being funny." And even later on, he's like, "Did you really mean that about the bunny?" And she was like, "Of course not." So you're over here now as the viewer like, this bitch really just fed them bunny rabbit. Like, that just went down. So there's definitely some screws loose and some weird stuff going on with Shauna. But back to Christy or Misty. What is it, Misty or Christy? Damn it. Misty, I believe it is. Christina Ricci's character. I think I'm combining Misty with Christina Ricci and it's turning into Christy. But she, is being accepted here now. So much so that she's like, taking a leak real quick. I mean, obviously no bathroom out here. So she's off, to the side by herself. And while she's doing that, she sees this flashing light. But even right before then, she hears two girls passing. It's just like, man, if we didn't have Misty out here, like, I know, like, if she didn't think fast, what would have happened? Same thing you're thinking as a viewer. And she has a smile. And then she sees the flashing light. And she goes towards the flashing light. And as she's looking at it, I forget the exact name of it, but it's basically something on planes. And that light's flickering. And it lets, the rescue team kind of know about where you are. And she just destroys it. And on the surface, and honestly just in general, but let me defend it to some degree, you're just like, "You dumb ass bitch." Like, oh my God, what did you do? Like, you can only imagine if everybody found out what she did. She just literally destroyed the communication for them to get help and to be found. And she found that, so she was able to be the one to, choose what to do with it. And she chose to destroy it. Really? But at the same time, you dig a little deeper, and that's like the whole point of this episode is just showing not only, Misty, but like the effect that like bullying and things of that nature can have on somebody. The fact that like she is willing to go to that extreme because this is the one point in life where she has felt somewhat, even somewhat accepted. And that is actually very interesting to me. She's still wrong. I'm not justifying it, but you see where she's coming from when she did it. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just like this flat out, oh my God, what the fuck are you thinking? I mean, it is that. I'm not justifying it, people. I'm not justifying it. But it's also like, damn, dude, that is the effect that just asshole kids can have on, other innocent kids. And that'll make you fucking think. But overall, man, this episode is much more the same to me. Like, even though it was more interesting because we had a little more stuff going on, now that they're wrecked, we're getting to kind of see the beginnings of that. But again, that's the word, the beginnings. We're still not sure what's going on here yet. But once again, I am still very interested in what's to come. And I'm digging the characters. I'm really liking the younger characters and the older characters. We'll see how all this transpires, people. I'm very, very interested in where this is going to go. As I said last week, we'll see if we get a little more episode 3, maybe, maybe not. I don't know how many episodes this is. I think I might have read 8, but I could be very wrong about that. So we'll see you guys. But either way, man, interesting show. Highly recommended. I'll give this episode a 8.2 out of 10. Like, I was latched onto the screen, even though we still don't know where this is going. I'm still right there. You know what I mean? I'm right there with it. So that's a big thing for me with shows. And again, the acting, cinematography, characters, all that shit, very on point. And the few times we get gore, even though we haven't seen anything super crazy yet, looks real good. So yeah, guys, keep watching Yellowjackets for sure. Episode 2 is even better than episode 1. Let's see where this shit goes.